Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming out on this beautiful Saturday to spend a few hours here discussing what this very important book is for Ontario Liars, the Wynne record. Just once again, I want to thank Peggy Kelly for agreeing to host this, for the great barbecue, for accommodating everyone here on this Saturday. I'd also like to once again thank Brian Lilly for the introduction there, and as well to Sun News, like Brian said, for bringing that important perspective to Ontario and to Canadians that was so desperately needed before Sun News was established and got off the ground. And finally, we've already said a few words about Freedom Press, but I also wanted to reiterate the importance and the thanks I have for Tristan and for Freedom Press for the great work that they've done in bringing this sort of perspective and this sort of conservative guidance and this sort of conservative background to the publishing and to the bookstores across Ontario and across Canada. And I know Tristan's been working hard to make Freedom Press a success for the last 10 years, and he's done it, like he said, by having this direct marketing approach, and he's also done it by having publishers work directly with the authors. I brought this book up to Tristan over Christmas time. I had done a little bit of work with it before then, and as soon as he heard about it, he was adamant that this was an important book that desperately needed to be told, both for Ontario and for all Canadians as a whole. The importance of Liars, the importance of the book, is really something that cannot be understated. Believe it or not, this is the first and it's the only book that's out there right now that actually chronicles the Liberal legacy starting under Dalton McGuinty, and that's only continued under Kathleen Wynne. And I mean, sure, there's dozens of books out there about how horrible Prime Minister Stephen Harper horribly is. There's lots of books out there about his economic policies, his family policies, even how he says goodbye to his son when he drops him off at school apparently makes the news for some reason. So it's great to know that we finally have this perspective out there on what the Liberal record is, both under Dalton McGuinty and continued so far under Kathleen Wynne. The strength of Liars is in its rigorous application of the research and the media reports that went into this book. This is not just a book on conservative talking points. It's a book with over 500 references on everything from experts, the government's own departments, public policy think tanks, and watchdogs like the Auditor General, who I'm pretty sure have spent more time writing about and investigating the Liberal Party than the Toronto Star has with Rob Ford. So the criticisms and the numerous problems that come up with this Liberal record of mismanagement come from Liberal supporters, conservatives, socialists, the media, from various perspectives across Ontario. Its strength as well is that it comes from all of the media across the province. It comes from the Toronto Star, the CBC, the National Post, the Globe and Mail, Sun News, in weaving together this sort of cohesive argument about why this Liberal government needs to change. Even the great Warren Kinsella, a former senior Liberal Chrétien-era staffer, has come out against this scandalized Liberal government. They've been very clear in saying they have no part in anything this Ontario Liberal government is doing. And it's great to finally get the facts out there to Ontarians and to Canadians, because like I've said before, once anyone reads this book, they'll have absolutely no hesitation on which way they need to vote on June 12th. So it seems that everyone in Ontario is kind of singing from the same sheet, that Ontario desperately needs to change, get its course back on track, with actual real leadership to implement the policies that are so crucial right now. This was actually quite refreshing when it came to writing the book. If you're a new Democrat, the way these Liberals have handled healthcare and education has to be an absolute embarrassment. If you're a Liberal, I don't know if there's any here today, but if you are, speaking hypothetically, if you are, the legacies that has been created in this Ontario government thanks to Dalton McGuinty and Kathleen Wynne has to be an absolute embarrassment. And finally, if you're conservative, the way that this government has doubled the debt and constantly used deficit spending to ramp up and to try every new little pet project they think is a good idea has to be what this election is all about. So Liars provides a very straightforward analysis, very straightforward argument. First, from the historical perspective, that Ontario was best governed by Conservatives for the overwhelming majority of the 20th century. And secondly, that dynasty was interrupted in 2003 with the election of Dalton McGuinty. Since then, Ontario has been subjected to a whole host of scandals, and like Brian said, we've heard of so many of them that sometimes it's difficult to actually put them all in perspective and to chronicle all of them. But let's just take a few minutes and we'll think about just a few of those scandals that have really defined the Ontario Liberal Party and what it's meant for Ontarians. The first scandal came just months after Dalton McGuinty was elected, when he actually said, oops, well, we took a second look at the books there, and we're actually going to have to impose this new $900 health tax to, apparently, so they said, to improve health care and cut down on wait times and provide investments. That's never happened. The Auditor General confirmed that's never happened, and it's only gotten worse since then. Then there was the eco-tax, which McGuinty thought he would conveniently try to slip to Ontarians on the same day that he imposed the HST. And so on that day, suddenly you had thousands of products of everything from mouse traps to cleaning supplies to sunscreen subjected to this extra tax. As of today, we're adding $372 per second to our debt. As of today, you, your children, and I, everyone here owes $21,000 if we were to pay off that debt tomorrow. And that number too has doubled since McGuinty took office. When cabinet ministers in this Liberal government are caught giving out grant money to organizations with Liberal connections, they're supported by Dalton McGuinty and Kathleen Wynne, if not promoted. Kathleen Wynne gave all of her leadership rivals cabinet posts and appointed her second place finisher, Sandra Papatello, as the chair of Hydro One. That was just before this election. She's even named her brother-in-law as the head of eHealth Ontario. So clearly, it's a family affair in the McGuinty-Wynne Ontario, as the unions, the public sector employees, the consultants, all collude together with direct ties to the Ontario Liberals. McGuinty and Wynne have always been fans of setting record firsts. Like I said earlier, McGuinty's doubled the debt since 2003, and the 3 small surplus budgets that he did implement were eclipsed by the thousands of new items that he began taxing and the massive deficits that he racked up, beating even the NDP's Bob Rae. McGuinty introduced this radical sex education agenda that would force these brand new, untested ideas onto children as young as 8 years old. They came up with the ridiculous idea of a kissing booth in elementary schools, and then they had the nerve to say any student that refused to participate was homophobic. This Liberal government has refused to enforce law when it comes to Aboriginal protesters and when it comes to any protest group that might not look great in the media. Whether it was the incredible violence that we saw in Caledonia, or whether it's the regular blockades that we normally see on railways and highways. We're giving unionized employees lavish pay increases and bonuses during a time that Dalton McGuinty and Kathleen Wynne have actually said with a straight face that wages are frozen. And now we have the Ontario Provincial Police Association using uniformed officers in commercials, in attack ads, saying that they might, quote, get involved in the election if they fear that they might lose that party that gave them that generous 8.5% tax hike, 8.5% pay hike just last year. We're paying teachers a maximum of $93,000 per year to teach 250,000 fewer students to a quickly diminishing standard, even according to the OECD and the Education Ministry's own EQAO head. The Liberals commissioned the Drummond Report, and after a year of study and over 560 pages of analysis with hundreds of recommendations, Dalton McGuinty had the nerve to say it was just advice that he would take into consideration along with all the other advisors that he's hired. The Liberals have completely lost touch with Ontario and what our province needs. They can't balance the books, but they sure want to make sure the McDonald's menu tells you how many calories are in a Big Mac. Ontario, under Dalton McGuinty and Kathleen Wynne, has easily become the most corrupt, the most scandalized government in Canada's history, and that's putting it lightly. Everything this Liberal government does or touches turns to waste, greed, scandal, or mismanagement. There are hundreds of other scandals out there that the Liberals have dragged our province through, but then the book would have been thousands of pages long, and it probably would have cost Tristan a few $100s to publish and to buy. We spend $1.1 billion on the gas plants, $1 billion on eHealth, $6 billion on Samsung's wind turbines, and $1 billion on Orange. We're giving millions of dollars paying off unionized employees who quit in disgrace because of scandal or something that they did or didn't do. We're paying Liberals to take contracts in the Liberal government, paid for by you and me. Now we have this Mars building in downtown Toronto, which will cost at least $317 million. We've had the Auditor General say that she will be investigating that, but of course, we won't have anything coming out before next Thursday. As well, we had even the Toronto Star saying this could easily be over $500 million by the time it's over. So it's entirely plausible this office building in downtown Toronto is going to become the next gas plant scandal. And this, once again, was something that's happened under Kathleen Wynne and the Ontario Liberals. The question now is when Ontarians will stand up and say enough is enough, and I hope the answer to that question is on June 12th. Unfortunately, thinking about much of this legacy, as most of us probably remember it, or we lived through it, or we read about it in the newspaper, it's those Ontarians who aren't here today who most need to be reminded about what Ontario has really been through over these last 11 years of Liberal government, whether it's corruption, mismanagement, nepotism, or waste. Brian alluded to that again, and that's why it's so important that I hope everyone here has either bought a copy or already has a copy, so that you know, so that your friends know, and so that your colleagues know exactly which way they need to vote on June 12th. So maybe pick up a copy, maybe 3, maybe 5, to really drive home the importance not only to you and your family, but to everyone else that really needs to know what this legacy was and the importance of the election on June 12th. Right now the polls are still too close to call. As of yesterday, June 6th, the Liberals have had a slight lead, but going into the final week of the campaign, anything can still happen. Just last night, as I'm sure many of us saw, the Working Families Coalition strategically placed hundreds of these signs across Ottawa in a lot of the different swing ridings, and even in some of the ridings that are very safe that the Working Families has no chance of winning. But again, when you have Liberal friends, they'll do anything for you, apparently. And again, by the way, those signs are against city bylaws, so to their credit, the city has been pretty quick in getting bylaw officers out there to take the signs down. So anything can happen in this final week of the campaign, and it's very important that everyone here votes on June 12th. And again, I really hope that everyone buys a copy of the book, that has a copy of the book, and that you're able to bring this book out and really drive the points home on what it means for Ontario, what Ontario has been through, and what the future can hold if we set the record straight on June 12th. So once again, thanks to everyone for coming out. I really appreciate it. Thanks again for the hosting.